They thought walking away from the negotiation table would be simple, that humans would remain passive while chaos spread. But they were wrong. Humans had prepared for this moment, watching, calculating, and striking with precision when the galaxy descended into disorder. Every fleet movement, every conflict, and every decision they made showed that humanity was unpredictable, strategic, and unstoppable. Chaos may have swept the stars, but humans turned it into an opportunity to restore order, reshape power, and demonstrate their true strength. Fascinated by humanity's ultimate victory? Subscribe now to see more epic HFY stories and legendary battles. The Interstellar Council gathered in a massive orbital station, a place that floated above a gas giant, its exterior glowing softly with energy shields and docking lights. Thousands of delegates from countless star systems filled the grand chamber, their forms and appearances unlike anything humans had ever seen before. Some were tall and crystalline, reflecting light in dazzling patterns, while others had fluid, shifting shapes that seemed to flow like liquid metal. The humans, in contrast, stood firmly in their seats, dressed in simple, practical uniforms, their expressions calm but alert. The room was silent for a moment as all eyes turned toward the human representative, Commander Aisha Kane, who had been trained for decades in diplomacy, strategy, and observation. She had studied every alien culture, every known negotiation tactic, and every possible threat. But even she felt the weight of this moment. The Council had gathered to discuss trade routes, resource distribution, and the boundaries of controlled space, discussions that had stretched for decades. Each alien faction had its own agenda, its own secrets, and its own ambitions, and the humans had learned long ago that subtlety and patience were essential. Kane rose from her seat, her movements precise and deliberate. Her voice echoed clearly in the chamber as she delivered the humans' ultimatum. It was firm but respectful, stating that the continued stalling, endless debates, and half-promises could no longer be tolerated. The humans demanded clear agreements, enforceable rules, and immediate action on issues that had been ignored for far too long. The alien delegates murmured among themselves, some frowning in offense, others shifting nervously, sensing the seriousness behind Kane's words. She explained that humanity had grown stronger, more self-reliant, and more aware of its place in the galaxy. They were no longer willing to bend their principles or compromise endlessly for the sake of diplomacy alone. The humans had prepared a comprehensive plan alongside the ultimatum, outlining specific terms regarding trade, defense, and interstellar boundaries. Kane's team had analyzed every possible reaction, every potential backlash, and every chance for negotiation. They had contingency plans for both compliance and resistance, ensuring that humanity would remain protected and influential no matter the outcome. Kane's calm demeanor concealed the careful calculations running through her mind. She knew that tone, timing, and clarity were everything in such a tense environment. A single misstep could trigger open conflict, and yet hesitation could show weakness. The alien council was not used to such directness from the humans. Many had grown accustomed to diplomatic ambiguity, subtle threats, and endless stalling tactics that allowed them to manipulate outcomes without confrontation. Kane's straightforward approach shocked some delegates, while others quietly admired the human resolve. For decades, humans had been observers, negotiators, and contributors, but never before had they openly challenged the established order in such a public and bold manner. The chamber felt charged, as if every molecule in the air vibrated with tension. Every delegate was aware that this ultimatum could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans did not rely on threats alone. Their message carried weight because it was backed by capability. By the time the humans spoke, they had fleets, technology, and alliances ready to act if their demands were ignored. Kane's calm yet unwavering words were more than just diplomacy. They were a warning that humans would not be pushed aside, that their interests were non-negotiable, and that their patience had limits. The aliens who had underestimated humanity now faced a species that could combine intellect, strategy, and force in ways that few others could imagine. As Kane finished speaking, she sat down without a word, her face composed, yet her eyes scanned the room, watching reactions, measuring each gesture, each whisper, each subtle movement for hints of intent. The humans had delivered their ultimatum clearly, leaving no ambiguity. It was now up to the alien council to respond, and the tension in the chamber was almost unbearable. Some aliens began to whisper urgently among themselves, debating how to react without appearing weak. Others leaned back, uncertain whether to confront or concede. Meanwhile, the humans remained calm, silently confident that they had set the stage for the next chapter in interstellar relations. This moment, this simple declaration of limits, would ripple across star systems and alter the path of galactic politics forever. After hours of tense discussion, the human delegation realized that no progress would come from the negotiations. The alien council had twisted words, stalled decisions, and dismissed key human concerns. Kane knew that diplomacy had reached a dead end. Continuing to sit at the table would only waste time and risk appearing weak. She exchanged a brief, silent glance with her team, a signal that the moment to act had arrived. Without a word, the humans began to rise, their movements calm, controlled, and deliberate, as if every gesture carried the weight of decades of preparation. The room seemed to pause, alien delegates frozen mid-sentence. Some eyes widened in shock, others narrowed in suspicion. The humans did not shout, threaten, or argue. They simply left, walking out in unison, leaving the council in stunned silence. The empty chairs of the human delegation felt heavier than any physical presence. Screens across the orbital station displayed the departure in real time, sending ripples of confusion and fear across allied systems. Observers on distant planets and stations whispered urgently about the implications. Questions spread like wildfire. Why had the humans walked away? What would they do next? Did this mean war, or merely a new strategy of leverage? No one had expected such a decisive move. For centuries, humans had been patient negotiators, always measured, rarely impulsive, yet now they demonstrated a boldness that startled even the most seasoned alien diplomats. The departure was not a sign of weakness or surrender. On the contrary, it was a calculated demonstration of strength. By leaving the table, humans made it clear that they would not be bound by fruitless arguments or empty promises. Kane and her team were sending a message. Humanity operated on its own terms. And if the galaxy wanted cooperation, it would have to respect those terms. The aliens realized immediately that the humans' silence spoke volumes. Every observer understood that humans were now signaling control over the pace and direction of interstellar affairs. Back on the observation decks, human officers monitored every alien reaction. Their strategy relied on careful calculation, not brute force. Kane's team analyzed facial expressions, body language, and whispered conversations among the alien delegates. Predicting reactions and planning contingencies required precision. The humans had long prepared for this moment, ensuring that their fleets, defenses, and alliances could respond instantly if the situation escalated. Their departure from the negotiation table was only the first step in a broader strategy designed to secure their position in the galaxy. Some alien factions were outraged, claiming protocol had been violated. They argued that walking away from the council was disrespectful and dangerous. Yet others were quietly impressed, recognizing the courage and clarity it took to act without hesitation. The chamber erupted into a chaotic mix of voices, debates, and heated arguments. None of them truly understood the humans' intentions, which only strengthened the humans' advantage. Confusion and uncertainty spread faster than any formal announcement could. Alien factions began second-guessing their own plans, afraid to act too quickly or too slowly. As the humans moved through the docking bay, they did so with quiet confidence. Every step reinforced the message that they were in control, not through intimidation, but through clear purpose and readiness. Across the galaxy, signals from the council stations began reaching other systems, alerting trade hubs, military outposts, and allied planets. The ripple effect was immediate. Markets fluctuated, fleets repositioned, and politicians debated the meaning of human intent. Humanity had not declared war, nor had they issued threats, but the impact was undeniable. Their mere action reshaped expectations, forcing everyone to reconsider how humans fit into the galactic equation. Kane and her delegation did not celebrate or gloat. They understood that leaving the council table was only the first move. The real test would come in the following days. As alien factions reacted, alliances shifted, and chaos began to spread across sectors where humans had previously acted as a stabilizing force. The The humans' patience, preparation, and strategic foresight would be tested, but for now, leaving had achieved its immediate purpose, demonstrating that humans would no longer be constrained, that they had the courage to act decisively, and that the galaxy would have to pay attention. Even in silence, their departure resonated. It marked the beginning of a new era, one where humans were no longer passive participants in interstellar politics. We were active shapers of events, capable of changing the trajectory of conflicts, trade, and alliances without firing a single shot. The Alien Council, once confident in its control over negotiations, was left to reckon with a new reality, one in which humans had rewritten the rules simply by walking away. The moment humans walked away from the negotiation table, chaos began to ripple through the stars. Without the humans acting as mediators, long-standing tensions between alien factions erupted almost instantly. Minor disagreements over trade routes, resource rights, and territorial claims turned into violent skirmishes. Patrol ships fired on one another over mining zones that had been disputed for decades. Each faction reacted differently, some with calculated aggression, others with panicked defense. Communications lines jammed with urgent reports of attacks and blockades. Commanders struggled to coordinate their fleets as rumors and misinformation spread faster than actual orders. The delicate balance that had held the galaxy together for so long began to unravel. In systems far from the Council, mercenary groups and rogue fleets saw an opportunity to exploit the chaos. They attacked poorly defended colonies, hijacked trade convoys, and seized valuable resources. Alien diplomats scrambled to contain the conflicts, but without humans as a stabilizing force, negotiations were meaningless. Star systems that had once been peaceful hubs of commerce became battle zones, with civilian populations caught in the crossfire. Entire sectors experienced sudden power vacuums as dominant factions overextended themselves. The galaxy seemed to teeter on the edge of widespread war, and no one could predict where the next flare-up would occur. Even the largest alien coalitions struggled to maintain order. Internal disputes intensified as leaders blamed one another for the sudden breakdown. Some generals acted independently, launching strikes without authorization, while politicians panicked, trying to broker agreements that were already failing. The absence of humans created a vacuum of authority, one that allowed both ambition and recklessness to flourish. Analysts monitoring the galaxy noted that conflicts were spreading exponentially. Each localized skirmish had a cascading effect, drawing in allies and rivals alike. The interconnectedness of trade, defense, and communication networks meant that a single spark could ignite a chain reaction across multiple systems. Amid the chaos, intelligence officers noted an unexpected pattern. Rogue factions and opportunistic fleets moved quickly to occupy strategic positions, hoping to gain advantage before larger powers could respond. The humans had anticipated this, having studied the galaxy's communication patterns, fleet movements, and political alliances for decades. While the aliens struggled to react effectively, the humans watched and planned. Understanding the flow of chaos gave them an edge. They could predict which conflicts would escalate and which would collapse under their subtle influence. The human strategy was not to attack directly, but to position themselves where they could control outcomes without drawing immediate attention. Civilian populations suffered the consequences of the sudden collapse. In order, trade shipments were delayed or stolen, energy grids failed under sabotage or neglect, and emergency response units struggled to operate as fleets clashed in orbit above inhabited worlds. News of the chaos spread across planets at faster-than-light speeds, stirring fear and uncertainty. Many species began questioning their leadership, wondering why no one had anticipated the human departure and its consequences. Merchants and colonists feared for their safety, while military leaders tried to reorganize. But the speed of escalation made coordination nearly impossible. Some alien factions attempted temporary truces to prevent total collapse, but the truces were fragile and short-lived. Distrust ran deep, and old rivalries resurfaced with renewed intensity. Small skirmishes could trigger chain reactions that drew in dozens of fleets, and even a single misfired attack could spark months of conflict. Each faction had to make decisions quickly, often without complete information, and mistakes were costly. The galaxy was no longer a place of controlled diplomacy. It had become a theater of uncertainty, where ambition, fear, and opportunity collided violently. Amid all this turmoil, humans remained quiet observers, using advanced monitoring systems to track the unfolding chaos. They noted which factions were overextending themselves, which coalitions were vulnerable, and where intervention could restore balance without direct conflict. Kane and her team understood that the galaxy was now a chessboard, with each faction moving unpredictably, yet each move predictable if analyzed carefully. Their preparations allowed them to act decisively when the time was right, positioning humanity as the power capable of restoring stability if needed. The chaos spread not just across space, but also across politics, economics, and alliances. Entire trade networks collapsed temporarily, leaving planets isolated. Factions that had relied on alliances began to distrust each other, and the vacuum left by the humans' absence forced everyone to confront the limits of their power. The galaxy was in turmoil, and the consequences of the humans walking away were far greater than any alien had anticipated. Each skirmish, each conflict, and each political misstep was a reminder that order had depended on human presence more than most realized. Yet for humans, this chaos was an opportunity, a test of strategy, patience, and foresight that would ultimately redefine their role in the stars. Back on the human command station, Commander Kane and her team watched the galaxy with sharp focus. Every flicker of conflict, every movement of alien fleets, and every signal of panic was recorded and analyzed. The humans had prepared for this exact scenario, planning decades ahead for a moment when diplomacy alone would no longer suffice. Their strategy relied not on brute force, but on superior knowledge, coordination, and timing. Every system of the human fleet was positioned discreetly near critical sectors, ready to act at a moment's notice. Yet their presence was subtle, almost ghost-like, so that no one would immediately notice their full strength. Kane's team analyzed the unfolding chaos with precision, identifying which conflicts were likely to escalate uncontrollably and which could collapse under pressure. The humans studied alien tactics, recognizing patterns of overconfidence, hesitation, and greed. By understanding the psychology and culture of each faction, they could predict how events would unfold and where intervention would be most effective. Every skirmish, blockade, and territorial dispute became data, feeding into a complex strategy that combined observation, timing, and subtle influence. While chaos spread through contested sectors, human officers quietly secured key trade corridors and strategic planets. They deployed small, highly advanced teams to protect vulnerable locations without drawing attention to their presence. Their actions were precise, calculated, and efficient, avoiding unnecessary conflict while ensuring stability in critical regions. Kane knew that controlling the flow of resources and communication would give humans leverage in future negotiations. The humans were not acting out of aggression. They were shaping the battlefield in a way that would allow them to restore order when the time was right. Human intelligence networks monitored alien movements in real time, tracking fleet deployments, supply lines, and communications. Kane's team anticipated which factions would act rashly and which would hesitate. This gave humans the ability to intervene only when necessary, allowing chaos to weaken some factions while positioning themselves as saviors in others. They were playing a long game, one that relied on patience, observation, and strategic foresight. Each calculated move reinforced humanity's influence without needing open confrontation. Meanwhile, alien commanders struggled to respond to the rapidly evolving chaos. Their communications were fragmented, alliances strained under pressure, and rivalries flared. Many factions overestimated their own power and underestimated the humans' quiet dominance. The humans' absence at the council had created uncertainty, and now that uncertainty worked in humanity's favor. Alien leaders debated how to act, fearing that missteps could provoke retaliation from humans whose capabilities were underestimated. Kane's team understood that the fear of human intervention was already shaping decisions across sectors. Humans also reinforced defensive positions, ensuring that their controlled systems could withstand any direct aggression. Their technology allowed for rapid deployment and adaptation, from automated defense drones to advanced sensor networks that could detect threats across light years. By combining observation with readiness, humans created a position of strength that required no unnecessary confrontation. Kane and her officers moved like shadows, influencing outcomes subtly, ensuring that systems most critical to human interests remained secure. And that chaos elsewhere would ultimately benefit their position. Civilian populations in human-controlled sectors remained largely unaffected. Thanks to careful planning, trade and communication networks were maintained, energy grids protected, and supply chains monitored. This contrast with the chaos elsewhere emphasized human efficiency and reliability. Alien factions observed this stability and began to realize the advantage humans held. Their departure from the negotiation table had not weakened humanity. It had allowed humans to act decisively behind the scenes, shaping the galaxy in ways that were invisible but highly effective. Kane's team also prepared for eventual confrontation, analyzing potential scenarios where alien factions might challenge human control. Simulations of fleet engagements, resource seizures, and diplomatic maneuvers were run continuously, ensuring that the humans could respond quickly and effectively. The combination of preparedness, patience, and strategic positioning gave humanity a unique advantage. They were not merely observers. They were the hidden force that could influence outcomes without firing a shot. As the chaos continued to spread, the humans' quiet influence grew. Sectors that had been destabilized began to experience subtle restoration of order wherever humans had positioned themselves. Kane understood that every calculated action reinforced humanity's role as a decisive and capable power. The galaxy was in turmoil, but humans had the tools, strategy, and foresight to turn disorder into opportunity, positioning themselves as the force capable of controlling outcomes and shaping the future of interstellar politics. Every decision, observation, and placement reinforced a single truth: the humans were ready to act. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same again. A heavily industrial system far from the Council suddenly became the center of conflict. Alien factions had launched attacks on mining colonies and energy stations, believing that without humans to mediate, they could seize resources freely. Civilian populations sent desperate distress signals, and chaos spread through orbital networks as ships scrambled to defend critical installations. Commander Kane and her team monitored every movement, analyzing the attackers' strengths, formations, and likely strategies. They had anticipated that some factions would overreach in the absence of human oversight, and this system was the first major test of their plan. Kane decided that intervention was necessary, but it would not be reckless or overt. The humans had to stabilize the system efficiently while demonstrating their precision and power. Human fleets appeared almost like phantoms through the dense asteroid belts and nebulae surrounding the industrial system. Their ships moved silently, avoiding detection until the optimal moment. Advanced sensors tracked every hostile movement, allowing the humans to predict attacks before they happened. Kane's strategy emphasized control rather than destruction. She wanted to stop the chaos without unnecessary casualties, sending a clear message to both the attacking factions and the system's inhabitants. The aliens, focused on their offensive, did not notice the human ships aligning strategically around key stations and trade routes. When the humans finally engaged, it was precise and decisive. They deployed electronic countermeasures to disable enemy communications, forcing attackers to react blindly. Small, highly maneuverable human ships intercepted critical points of assault, neutralizing threats with minimal damage. The human fleet used advanced technology to manipulate gravity fields, project shields, and redirect energy flows, effectively controlling the battlefield without overwhelming force. Alien commanders were stunned. Their numerical advantage and aggressive strategies were rendered ineffective. They had not anticipated such coordinated precision or the humans' ability to control multiple fronts simultaneously. While the attackers were neutralized, human teams simultaneously assisted the colonies under siege, restoring power to critical stations, repairing energy grids, and evacuating civilians from hazardous areas. Kane ensured that the human presence was seen as protective rather than aggressive. The industrial system's inhabitants quickly recognized humanity's effectiveness and reliability. Their response contrasted sharply with the disorganized and reckless attacks of the alien factions. This dual approach of defense and subtle offense reinforced humanity's emerging reputation as both powerful and strategic. Alien factions attempted to regroup and counterattack, but every move was anticipated by the humans. Kane's team had studied their decision-making patterns, knowing that fear, confusion, and overconfidence would drive predictable actions. Humans exploited these tendencies, manipulating battlefield conditions to prevent coordinated counterattacks. Every skirmish reinforced the lesson that underestimating humanity was dangerous, and that bold, calculated intervention could change the outcome of a battle before it fully began. The aliens began to realize that humans did not need to destroy their enemies to assert control. Influence and timing were equally effective. As the system stabilized, Kane ensured that human forces remained strategically positioned, maintaining a presence that could respond instantly if conflict reemerged. Trade routes and energy corridors were secured, allowing commerce to continue, and civilian life gradually returned to normal. The humans had turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of their capability, showing the galaxy that they could intervene decisively and with precision without causing widespread destruction. The attackers withdrew in confusion and frustration, their confidence shaken, and word of humanity's intervention began to spread to neighboring systems. The successful stabilization also served as a test for human strategy in larger conflicts. Kane and her team collected detailed reports on alien tactics, fleet coordination, and psychological responses. Using this data to refine future operations, every engagement provided insight, allowing humans to anticipate not only the next move in this system, but patterns across the galaxy. Their presence, though subtle, was now a controlling force, shaping outcomes without overt domination. The aliens realized that humans' combination of observation, technology, and strategy was unmatched, and that future attacks would have to account for human unpredictability. Kane knew this was only the beginning. The industrial system was the first of many critical interventions where humans would demonstrate their power and control. Yet even in victory, she emphasized restraint and efficiency. The goal was not conquest, but stabilization, a demonstration that humanity could restore order while maintaining moral and strategic high ground. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humans could intervene anywhere, anytime, with precision and authority, changing the course of conflicts without unnecessary violence. The industrial system now stood as proof of humanity's capability, a beacon signaling that while chaos might sweep the stars, humans were ready to restore balance whenever necessary. As the humans stabilized one system after another, their influence began to spread quietly across the galaxy. Alien factions started to notice that conflicts they had expected to escalate out of control were being subtly controlled. Planets once in turmoil now experienced a strange calm where humans had positioned themselves. The humans did not broadcast their presence or declare authority. Instead, they acted with precision, ensuring that order returned without direct confrontation. Kane's team understood that perception was as important as action. The mere knowledge that humans could intervene at any moment caused alien commanders to hesitate and reconsider their strategies. In multiple sectors, opportunistic factions found themselves outmaneuvered, not by superior firepower, but by the humans' foresight and timing. Supply lines were protected, trade convoys escorted, and skirmishes neutralized before they could escalate. Every action was calculated to maintain balance, ensuring no faction gained overwhelming advantage while demonstrating human capability. Kane realized that true power came not from destruction, but from influence and anticipation. The humans were shaping outcomes in ways that were invisible to most, yet impossible to ignore for those paying close attention. Alien coalitions began to question their own decisions. Their previous confidence eroded by repeated failures to predict human moves. Commanders argued among themselves, unsure whether to attack, negotiate, or retreat. Their indecision created gaps that humans could exploit subtly, positioning themselves as both a stabilizing force and an unavoidable power. The psychological impact of humanity's presence became as important as their tactical interventions. Every hesitation, misstep, or panic move by alien leaders reinforced the lesson. Underestimating humans was dangerous. Humans also used information as a weapon. Monitoring communications, fleet movements, and political signals across sectors, Kane's team predicted which alliances would fracture and which would endure. They then acted to influence outcomes by securing critical positions, assisting targeted colonies, and subtly redirecting threats away from areas of strategic importance. The human fleet's superior coordination allowed them to control multiple engagements simultaneously, creating an impression of omnipresence, even though their forces remained strategically deployed in select locations. Civilian populations across human-influenced systems began to recognize the difference. Unlike the chaos and destruction in purely alien-controlled regions, human-protected areas experienced stability and continuity. Trade continued. Energy supplies were maintained, and essential services operated without disruption. This contrast heightened humanity's reputation, demonstrating not only capability, but also responsibility and foresight. Kane understood that reputation was a form of currency, and that establishing trust while maintaining strength would have lasting effects on interstellar relations. Alien factions attempted to respond, sending fleets to test human positions or challenge human control. Each move was anticipated, countered, or redirected. The humans had studied the likely behaviors of each faction, exploiting predictable patterns in aggression and defense. By controlling timing, positioning, and perception, they turned potential threats into opportunities. The humans were no longer simply participating in the galaxy's conflicts. They were actively shaping the course of events, guiding outcomes without the need for overt war. Every intervention reinforced human supremacy in subtle ways. Kane and her team maintained a careful balance, ensuring that no single faction felt completely dominated, while demonstrating that humanity could act decisively if provoked. Their goal was influence and control, not annihilation. Each calculated move built a web of power that extended across star systems, making humans the invisible force behind restored order and stability. Even factions that had previously ignored or mocked humanity now approached engagements with caution, knowing that humans could intervene anywhere and at any time. The psychological impact of these interventions spread faster than the physical effects. Alien leaders began to alter long-term strategies, reconsider alliances, and rethink aggressive campaigns. Fear, respect, and uncertainty shaped decisions in ways that humans could predict and exploit. Kane's team maintained detailed records of behavior, reactions, and outcomes, allowing them to refine tactics and anticipate challenges before they arose. The galaxy was learning a new lesson. Humans were not reckless, but neither were they constrained by indecision or bureaucracy. By controlling both action and perception, humanity became the pivot point of interstellar politics. Chaos continued in regions beyond their immediate influence. But human-guided sectors provided models of efficiency, strategic foresight, and stability. Kane understood that each successful intervention strengthened the humans' position, preparing them for larger conflicts and more decisive actions in the future. The combination of subtle control, psychological influence, and strategic precision ensured that humanity's presence could no longer be ignored. Factions learned that the humans' reach extended far beyond visible fleets, and that their interventions could shape the galaxy without a single open declaration of dominance. In this way, humans were not just participants, they were the architects of order, guiding the course of events across countless systems. Their influence, quiet but undeniable, set the stage for a galaxy that recognized human strategic supremacy. Each calculated intervention reinforced the notion that humans were capable of controlling outcomes with minimal conflict, leaving alien factions unsure whether to resist, negotiate, or surrender to the subtle power that humanity now wielded so effectively. A major alien coalition, confident in its strength, decided to confront the human fleet directly. They believed that the humans were distracted by managing multiple conflicts and that this would be an easy victory. Fleet commanders mobilized dozens of ships, coordinating a large-scale assault over a strategically critical wormhole. The coalition expected to control the choke point, cutting off human access to key sectors. They underestimated, however, the humans' ability to anticipate and respond to complex maneuvers. Kane and her officers had studied their tactics, supply lines, and likely strategies, allowing humans to prepare without revealing their full strength. As the alien fleet approached, the humans positioned themselves with careful precision. Using advanced sensors, electronic countermeasures, and predictive algorithms, they anticipated every potential attack. Human ships were deployed not for brute force, but for control. Their fleet moved in patterns that allowed them to defend, intercept, and manipulate the battlefield simultaneously. Alien commanders assumed that numbers and aggression would overwhelm the humans, but every move they made played into Kane's strategic plan. Humans turned the chaos of the approaching battle to their advantage, controlling the flow of engagement without unnecessary loss. The battle began with a series of seemingly small maneuvers. Human ships blocked key approach vectors, disabled enemy communications, and neutralized lead ships before the coalition realized the scale of the threat. Kane's strategy emphasized precision over destruction, targeting critical vulnerabilities to disrupt coordination rather than inflict indiscriminate damage. Alien commanders were shocked, their plans unraveling in real time. Every maneuver they attempted was anticipated, every flanking attempt countered. Their confidence shattered as they realized the humans' superior understanding of tactics and timing. While the main fleets engaged, human officers directed specialized squads to protect civilian colonies, trade hubs, and strategic stations within the contested system. These teams acted quickly to repair energy grids, secure cargo, and ensure that infrastructure remained intact despite the ongoing battle. Kane understood that demonstrating humanity's ability to protect and stabilize while fighting would send a clear message to both allies and enemies. The humans were not aggressors, but regulators of order, and their efficiency in crisis reinforced their reputation as a decisive power. Alien forces attempted to regroup and launch counterattacks, but every effort was anticipated. Neutralizing threats before they could fully develop, humans exploited the predictable psychology of the coalition, using fear, confusion, and overconfidence against them. Kane's team had predicted which commanders would panic, which would hesitate, and which would miscommunicate, turning each flaw into an advantage. Even technologically superior sections of the alien fleet were forced into retreat or surrender, unable to coordinate effectively under human control of the battlefield. As the battle reached its climax, the humans executed a decisive maneuver, blocking the wormhole access entirely, isolating the alien coalition from reinforcements. They used precision strikes to disable engines and key weapon systems without causing unnecessary destruction. The coalition's remaining forces were left vulnerable, trapped between human strategic positioning and the natural obstacles of the wormhole's gravitational currents. Kane's calm command contrasted sharply with the chaos and desperation among alien leaders. Every decision and maneuver had been calculated to minimize risk while maximizing psychological and tactical impact. The coalition's defeat was not only physical, but symbolic, demonstrating that humanity's strategic foresight, coordination, and precision could overwhelm larger forces. The aliens had underestimated the humans' ability to anticipate and control outcomes, and the consequences were clear. News of the decisive victory spread quickly across nearby systems, sending shockwaves through other factions who had been watching. Suddenly, humans were no longer a distant presence. They were the power that could decide battles before they fully began. Their reputation as unpredictable, precise, and capable of decisive action grew exponentially. After the battle, Kane ensured that human forces maintained control of the strategic wormhole, stabilizing the region and allowing trade and civilian movement to continue safely. This demonstration of power was not meant to conquer, but to assert influence, showing that humans could protect key areas while neutralizing threats efficiently. Alien factions realized that any future confrontation would require careful planning and respect for human capabilities. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Underestimating humans could lead to total defeat, and their strategic intelligence was as formidable as their technological might. The aftermath of the battle marked a turning point. Kane and her team collected detailed intelligence on alien tactics, fleet structures, and decision-making, preparing for future conflicts and ensuring that humanity remained several steps ahead. Each engagement reinforced humans' reputation as decisive and reliable, yet unpredictable. The coalition's loss also demonstrated that human intervention could stabilize chaos while maintaining ethical restraint. This victory over a major force established humans as the central pivot in galactic power, a species whose strategic foresight and control could influence events across systems without resorting to overwhelming destruction. By the end of the engagement, the lesson was clear to all. Humans combined precision, patience, and strategic insight to achieve dominance. Their victory was decisive, their methods calculated, and their influence undeniable. Alien factions would think twice before attempting direct confrontation again. The galaxy had witnessed a turning point, one that redefined the balance of power, positioning humanity as a force capable of shaping outcomes across the stars with intelligence, discipline, and unparalleled foresight. With chaos sweeping across the stars, humans did not seek conquest or domination. They acted with a clear purpose: to restore balance and ensure stability in a galaxy teetering on the edge of disorder. Commander Kane and her team returned to the negotiation table, but this time their presence carried undeniable weight. They were no longer just participants or observers. They were arbiters, able to influence decisions with authority earned through action. Alien delegates recognized that humans had demonstrated both the ability and the will to act decisively, and that ignoring their influence could have catastrophic consequences. The humans approached negotiations with calm confidence, presenting terms that prioritized fairness, accountability, and long-term stability. Kane and her team understood the psychology of each faction, knowing which were likely to resist and which would follow. By leveraging the chaos that had already unfolded, humans ensured that their position was unshakable. Every argument, proposal, and condition was backed by the reality of humans' recent interventions. Alien leaders had witnessed firsthand the consequences of underestimating human strategic foresight, and their approach to the humans shifted from arrogance to caution. Human strategy emphasized both principle and pragmatism. They insisted on rules that protected neutral systems, secured trade routes, and prevented the recurrence of uncontrolled skirmishes. At the same time, Kane ensured that human influence was acknowledged without provoking resentment. Every faction had to recognize humanity's capability, yet still feel respected and included. The humans' previous interventions acted as proof of their reliability and authority, demonstrating that they could enforce stability without unnecessary aggression. This dual approach of power and diplomacy made humans indispensable to interstellar governance. Alien civilizations gradually accepted the new terms, some reluctantly, others with gratitude. Recognizing that the humans' intervention had prevented widespread destruction and loss, Kane and her team facilitated the creation of monitoring networks and communication protocols that allowed rapid responses to future crises. These systems were designed to maintain order while respecting the autonomy of individual factions. Humanity's influence was now woven into the very fabric of interstellar politics, not through coercion, but through competence, foresight, and careful strategy. The humans also demonstrated restraint, making it clear that their actions were driven by principle rather than desire for conquest. Kane emphasized that stability and cooperation would benefit all species, and that reckless aggression or unilateral action by any faction would have consequences. Alien leaders realized that humanity's unpredictability was paired with ethical clarity, making them both formidable and trustworthy. This unique combination of strategic intelligence, moral authority, and decisive action allowed humans to guide outcomes without needing to dominate. The galaxy began to recognize humans not as a threat, but as a stabilizing force, capable of shaping the future without unnecessary conflict. Every intervention, battle, and negotiation reinforced humanity's position. Kane ensured that humans were always several steps ahead, anticipating disputes before they could erupt, positioning forces strategically, and providing assistance where needed. Other factions adjusted their behavior, learning to consider human influence in every decision. The balance of power shifted quietly but profoundly. Humanity's actions had created a network of stability that spanned systems, trade routes, and political alliances. Each faction learned that collaboration with humans was both practical and necessary, while defiance carried unpredictable risk. Humans had rewritten the rules of interstellar engagement. They had shown that leaving the negotiation table was not a failure, but a strategic move that ultimately strengthened their influence. Kane's team had turned absence into leverage, chaos into opportunity, and observation into authority. Alien civilizations had no choice but to adapt to this new reality. They could no longer ignore humanity, and they understood that future conflicts or negotiations would occur on terms set by humans' demonstrated capabilities. By the time the negotiations concluded, the galaxy had entered a new era, one in which humans were central to decision-making, conflict resolution, and strategic planning. Kane and her team had achieved a delicate balance, asserting authority without conquest, enforcing stability without aggression, and reshaping interstellar politics with subtlety and foresight. The ripple effects of their interventions would continue to influence factions, alliances, and trade for decades. Ensuring that the lessons of chaos and order were remembered, humanity had proven that bold action, strategic thinking, and ethical conduct could redefine the balance of power across the stars. The human delegation left the council chamber, not as conquerors, but as respected arbiters whose influence could not be ignored. Their presence and actions had forever altered interstellar relations, demonstrating that a species willing to act decisively, strategically, and ethically could guide the fate of entire civilizations. The galaxy had changed, and humanity's role as both stabilizer and power broker was firmly established. Chaos had swept the stars, but humans had turned disorder into opportunity, and through careful strategy, foresight, and restraint, they had ensured that the future would follow a new order shaped by their influence.